Joe Budden is in hot water again, but this time, it's not about his podcast drama. During a recent discussion, he made a shocking joke about Meg Thee Stallion, a joke that has left millions outraged. Megan turned down a major video game opportunity because it involved her character being shot, and instead of understanding her choice, Joe said he would have played the game just to shoot her character. The internet erupted, calling out how his words trivialize real trauma, especially violence against Black women. Critics say this isn't just a joke, it's part of a bigger problem about respect, race, and accountability in media. Stay tuned, because what Joe said has everyone talking, and you need to hear exactly why. Joe Budden has once again found himself at the center of a major controversy, though this time it has nothing to do with Melissa Ford or any internal drama within his podcast network. Instead, his latest backlash stems from comments he made about Meg Thee Stallion, comments that many believe cross the line from edgy humor into harmful territory. Joe has never shied away from expressing controversial opinions, and throughout the lengthy legal battle between Megan and Tory Lanez, he openly aligned himself with Tory. He repeatedly insisted that Megan was lying about being shot and suggested that the public had been manipulated into believing her side of the story. Every time the conversation resurfaced on his podcast, he would chime in with a remark that critics say minimized Megan's trauma or implied she fabricated the entire situation. This latest issue arose when the podcasters began discussing Megan turning down a major commercial opportunity with Call of Duty, one of the biggest video games in the world. According to the discussion, the game's developers wanted to include Megan as a playable digital character, an opportunity many celebrities would jump at given the exposure and financial payoff that comes with such a partnership. But Megan reportedly declined once she learned the character would be shootable, meaning players could take aim at her avatar, fire virtual weapons, and watch the character be hit or killed in the game. Considering her real-life experience of being shot, a highly publicized traumatic moment she continues to face criticism and disbelief over, many agreed that her decision made sense. She had every right to protect her emotional well-being and reject something that might re-traumatize her or turn her pain into entertainment. However, Joe Budden reacted to that detail with a joke that immediately struck a nerve. He said that although he doesn't play Call of Duty, he would have bought the game specifically so he could shoot at Megan's character. In his world, it may have been a throwaway comment meant to entertain listeners and trigger a reaction. But online, the remark traveled quickly and ignited outrage, particularly among women who were already exhausted by the constant ridicule aimed at Megan ever since the shooting incident became public. For many people, this wasn't just a poorly timed attempt at humor, it symbolized something deeper and far more troubling. Meg Thee Stallion is a Black woman who survived gun violence, and yet instead of being widely supported and believed, she continues to be mocked, doubted, and publicly targeted. The idea that a popular male media figure would joke about finding enjoyment in shooting at her, even virtually, triggered an emotional response from viewers who saw this as yet another example of society's casual attitude toward violence against Black women. Critics highlighted how normalized the disrespect has become. Ever since Megan admitted she initially lied about sleeping with Tory Lanez, a detail she concealed out of embarrassment, some people decided nothing she says can be trusted. That single personal omission became an excuse for many men online to dismiss her injuries, accuse her of manipulation, and turn her situation into a joke. Social media users have joked about her being shot, questioned whether the bullet even hit her, and created memes treating the whole ordeal as entertainment. Joe's comment tapped into that ongoing trend and brought those painful conversations back into the spotlight. Women responding to the podcast emphasized that words like Joe's don't exist in a vacuum. When influential men mock female trauma, especially when the woman in question is Black, it reinforces a harmful narrative that their safety and suffering are not taken seriously. Survivors of gun violence online shared their own frustrations, saying his comments felt cruel and insensitive to anyone who has experienced similar fear and physical harm. They argued that a man of his stature should not normalize joking about violence, even if it takes place in a fictional gaming environment. The backlash also reignited conversations about Joe Budden's own history, including past allegations involving his treatment of women and the professional consequences he has already faced. Many questioned why he would risk more controversy at a time when his brand is still rebuilding partnerships and recovering from previous scandals. After losing major sponsorships in the past, one would assume that he'd want to avoid comments that could be interpreted as misogynistic or encouraging harm. Yet here he was again, making headlines for all the wrong reasons. What makes this controversy especially heated is the broader cultural moment happening around it. People are examining how Black women are treated in media, how their pain is often minimized, and why they are so frequently disbelieved or blamed. Joe Budden's comment didn't create those issues, but it added fuel to a long-existing fire. Even those who believe he was simply joking acknowledge that this kind of humor contributes to a climate where violence against black women becomes trivialized. The argument from critics is simple: if you possess a large platform, you have a responsibility to use it carefully. Millions listen to Joe Budden, and with that level of influence, every word has power. What might feel like a joke between friends becomes a message amplified across the internet, and not everyone who hears it will interpret it playfully. For some, comments like his serve as validation to continue mocking or discrediting women who come forward with painful truths. In the end, this controversy is not solely about a gaming reference or a single offhand remark on a podcast. It reflects the ongoing tension between freedom of speech and social responsibility, and the increasingly loud demand for public figures to treat women, especially black women, with dignity and respect. Whether Joe Budden chooses to acknowledge the harm his comment caused or simply moves on from yet another scandal remains to be seen. But what is clear is that Meg Thee Stallion's story continues to reveal uncomfortable truths about how society still responds to black women's trauma, with skepticism, disrespect, and laughter where empathy should be. A number of women, including survivors of gun violence, expressed disappointment and frustration at what they perceived as a dangerous and misogynistic joke. They pointed out that ever since Megan admitted she initially lied about sleeping with Tory Lanez, out of embarrassment, some men had dismissed her entire account of the shooting and have chosen instead to publicly mock her trauma. This has contributed to a growing and deeply concerning trend where violence against black women becomes the punchline of online jokes. As critics have emphasized, the issue has expanded beyond just Megan's personal experience. It now highlights a much broader pattern in society. Black women often face disbelief, ridicule, and a lack of empathy when they come forward about harm done to them. And once again, that larger narrative has become a core part of how this controversy is being discussed. Some people are now arguing that Joe Budden's joke has turned into a much bigger issue than necessary. Critics are framing it as an example of violence against an entire race and gender, insisting that mocking the act of shooting a black woman, even in a video game, is unacceptable. They say that although Megan initially lied to Gayle King about her relationship with Tory Lanez, that doesn't justify jokes involving gun violence. To them, turning his comment into humor is not simply a poor attempt at being funny, it contributes to harmful narratives about black women's safety. One woman responding to Joe Budden's remarks explained that she doesn't expect him to suddenly become a model of morality or to always speak with compassion. He has built his brand on raw, unfiltered commentary, and she knows better than to expect polished professionalism from him. Yet even with those low expectations in mind, she said it was unsettling and disappointing to hear someone with his level of influence casually declare that he would download an entire video game just for the pleasure of shooting at a black woman's character, especially a woman who endured a real-life shooting that continues to affect her emotionally and physically. To her and many others, there is nothing humorous about reenacting violence against someone who has already survived the very thing being joked about. Supporters of Joe Budden have brushed off the situation by claiming that he was simply joking, that the comment was nothing more than shock value entertainment meant to make headlines and generate viral clips. They argue that the purpose of his podcast is to push boundaries and spark reactions, and that audiences should know by now not to take everything he says so literally. In their view, the outrage is exaggerated, an overreaction from people who were already eager to paint Joe as the villain. But critics strongly disagree. They believe that this kind of comment doesn't come from nowhere, that it reflects a deeper, more troubling mindset. They argue that even jokes reveal something about what a person finds amusing, what they think is acceptable to laugh at, and who they believe can be harmed without consequence. They worry that the women in Joe's personal and professional life may overlook these comments as harmless banter, when in reality they highlight a lack of respect for women's safety, dignity, and trauma. If a man can speak so casually about violence toward a famous black woman, someone with wealth, fame, fans, security, and influence, what does that say about how he views everyday women who have far fewer protections? For many critics, the excuse of "it's just clickbait" holds no weight anymore. They feel that society has reached a point where public figures must take responsibility for the messages they broadcast, especially those involving violence, race, and gender. When a celebrity who commands millions of followers jokes about harming a woman, even in a fictional video game setting, it can normalize dangerous attitudes. It can encourage others to belittle, mock, or dismiss the real pain that victims of violence experience. And when the woman being targeted is black, the historical context becomes even more crucial. A long legacy of black women being disrespected, silenced, or ignored makes these comments feel like a continuation of that harm. Those speaking out argue that consequences are necessary, not simply to punish Joe Budden, but to send a message to the public that certain lines should not be crossed for entertainment. They point out that when a man with a significant platform speaks freely without regard for the harm he may cause, sponsors, partners, and networks have every right to reconsider their association with him. Money and influence amplify a person's speech, and with that amplification must come accountability. Some believe that if the backlash becomes strong enough, his platform should be taken away, or at least jeopardized, to remind him and others like him that fame does not grant immunity from responsibility. This discussion has also sparked a larger conversation about how Black women must constantly fight to have their pain acknowledged. Meg Thee Stallion's shooting ordeal, instead of being treated as a serious crime against a woman, has been turned into ongoing comedy material in corners of the internet. People have created memes, questioned her injuries, accused her of lying, and portrayed her as someone seeking attention rather than justice. For many Black women watching how she has been treated, Joe Budden's joke isn't a harmless, isolated incident. It's a symptom of a much bigger cultural sickness. It shows how easily people dismiss their fear, trauma, and experiences with violence. Activists and everyday individuals alike have pointed out that humor doesn't erase harm. A joke can reinforce prejudice. A funny remark can echo real threats that women face every day. And when those threats are rooted in racial stereotypes and misogyny, the damage becomes even more layered and painful. As one commentator stated, "We don't need more people making jokes about shooting Black women. We need people who protect them, believe them, and stand with them." In the midst of this escalating backlash, critics are urging Joe Budden to reflect more deeply on why the joke was hurtful. They argue that growth begins when someone who has a public voice is willing to listen to criticism, learn from it, and speak more responsibly going forward. Instead of doubling down on shock humor, they hope he will recognize the importance of using his platform to uplift rather than demean, especially when speaking about women who continue to be targets of violence and ridicule. Whether Joe Budden chooses to take this moment as an opportunity for change or simply waves off the criticism as more haters remains to be seen. But the controversy makes one thing clear: when influential figures trivialize violence against Black women, society is no longer willing to sit quietly and laugh along. And for the first time in a long time, more people are recognizing that harm disguised as humor is still harm, and should be treated as such. This backlash also comes at a time when Joe Budden is working to rebuild his reputation. He recently regained sponsorships and received positive media attention after years of setbacks, including losing partnerships with Spotify, Patreon, and most notably Cash App in 2022. That loss stemmed from an employee, Olivia Dope, accusing him of sexual harassment, and the situation resulted in a viral scandal and a public apology. Because of this history, critics argue he should be far more cautious about anything that could damage his brand again. They believe his friendship with Tory Lanez should not lead him to take reckless shots at Meghan, especially when he has already apologized once for disrespectful comments about her during the trial. In their view, Joe's platform is too large for him to act carelessly. Even if his intention wasn't to promote real violence, his words give fuel to those who minimize or joke about harm toward Black women. And, as expected, some people are already using his remarks to revive that harmful narrative once more. Critics warn that Joe Budden's comment could easily be used against him, with people claiming he is attacking all Black women instead of addressing a single person. After years of observing how social media reacts, especially over the last decade, it has become clear that certain conversations are now treated very differently than before. The manosphere and red pill content that once dominated online spaces has largely faded, with many creators becoming demonetized or abandoning the movement altogether. On the white side of the manosphere, the ideology has shifted into the political realm and become closely tied with the alt-right. Figures like Andrew Tate show just how much this type of content has evolved from relationship commentary to political messaging. Because of this shift, men with professional careers, sponsorship deals, and public brands must understand just how crucial it is to maintain a respectful image, especially when discussing women. There are countless examples showing the consequences of careless speech. Shannon Sharpe, who has never been known as someone who attacks women, still ended up losing major sponsorship opportunities, including a Boost mobile deal reportedly worth millions, due to a single controversy. Situations like that prove that one poorly delivered comment can derail years of progress. The reality today is that making jokes or commentary involving violence toward women, even hypothetically or in a video game, is not taken lightly. While Joe Budden likely didn't intend to promote real-life harm or gender-based violence, that's not how critics will portray it. Once the narrative shifts, activists and online communities apply pressure on brands and sponsors to cut ties. We've seen similar outcomes with teachers or other public figures who expressed even mild criticism toward political personalities like Charlie Kirk. Opponents simply brought their words to employers and sponsors, raising concerns about the behavior of someone representing their organization, and people lost their jobs as a result. The lesson is clear. In today's environment, brands prioritize protection over association with controversy, and one joke can quickly become the excuse needed to remove someone entirely. Sponsors don't care whether someone's audience leans left or right. Their primary concern is protecting their profits and maintaining a positive public image. A brand's goal is to appeal to as wide an audience as possible: conservative, liberal, religious, non-religious, young, old. It doesn't matter, as long as the revenue keeps coming in and the company is viewed favorably by potential consumers. This is why brands are highly cautious about whom they choose to associate with. When a public figure becomes controversial, no matter their intent, it creates risk for any company tied to them. Even a single poorly judged comment can turn into a viral moment, triggering online backlash, boycotts, and public pressure, all of which threaten the sponsor's bottom line. If your income depends on sponsorships, that reality imposes limits on the freedom to speak. Every word you say in public or on social media can reflect on those investing in you, and companies expect their reputation to remain untarnished. This means that while a controversial comment may seem harmless to you or your core fanbase, brands interpret it as a potential liability. Shock value or edgy content may generate views or clicks, but it also risks losing the financial support that allows your platform to operate. Celebrities and content creators must balance their personal opinions with the responsibility that comes with having other people's money behind them. Of course, there are exceptions. If you build your career entirely on a platform designed for fringe or niche audiences, such as Rumble, and you rely on a specific group that expects provocative or controversial content, as some figures like Nick Fuentes do, then there is more freedom to speak recklessly. The audience in those spaces actively embraces statements that mainstream society would find offensive or shocking, and the consequences to sponsorships are minimal because there are fewer mainstream investors involved. But this is the exception, not the rule. For most creators and public figures who depend on corporate sponsors or brand partnerships, every comment matters. Thinking before speaking is essential when your success relies on companies willing to put their name and money behind you. Sponsorship is not just financial support. It is an implicit endorsement of your character and public behavior. Companies are highly sensitive to public perception, and if a controversy arises, they will act swiftly to protect themselves. Even a joke that some may consider harmless or humorous can be interpreted as offensive or damaging, particularly if it involves sensitive subjects like race, gender, or violence. In today's media environment, backlash spreads rapidly, and companies have learned that distancing themselves quickly is often the only way to avoid being associated with negativity. Ultimately, having a sponsorship means that your speech is no longer entirely your own. It comes with responsibility. Brands will not tolerate behavior that could jeopardize their reputation, and if a controversy arises, they will not hesitate to pull support to protect themselves. Every public comment is a reflection not only of the individual but also of the companies funding them. This reality underscores the importance of caution, thoughtfulness, and accountability when speaking publicly, especially for those whose livelihood depends on corporate partnerships and brand affiliations.